Good day, student. You're welcome to this edition of Scholars Universal School online classes. And in this class, we'll be discussing the subject economics. The topic we'll be considering today is called
price mechanism. When you hear the word price mechanism, what are we talking about? You know, price mechanism is synonymous to price determinant. We'll be talking about fixing of price and what are the reasons or the factors that influence or that affect the fixing of the price of the commodity. Okay, before we move into this class properly, I want us to, do a quick check on the history of fuel prices in Nigeria. Okay, as you can see, we have the prices of fuel in Nigeria from the year 1978 during Obasanjo regime. That was when Obasanjo was still the head of state. You can see the flow, the trend. It was 50 kobo then to the year 1999 when it was Abdul Salam and Obasanjo. That's when Obasanjo became the president again. It was 20 naira in that year. Now you notice that there is increase in the price of fuel, and now if we move to the year 2000 to year 2016, you notice the flow of prices of fuel. And in the year 2016, during Buhari's regime, the price of fuel moved to 145 naira, and also in the year 2020, the price of fuel moved from 145 naira to 125 naira. Okay, so you'll agree with me that there are some reasons behind the change of prices. So those are the things that we'll be considering in this topic. So stay tuned. All right. So now when we talk about price mechanism, we're talking about the determinant, as I've said earlier. Now you need to know that in a free market economy or a perfectly competitive market, the prices of goods and services are determined by the interaction between the forces of demand and supply. Now, when I say free market economy, I'm referring to this to the market settings whereby there is little or no government intervention. We're talking about markets where when we have enough number of suppliers and enough number of customers that are placing demands. You're talking about this kind of market settings where there is free flow in and out of the market. We're talking about the market whereby there is really no restrictions by the governments on the market. Okay, so in that kind of market whereby we have enough number of suppliers, enough number of customers, the prices of goods and services will be determined by the forces of demand and supply. And don't forget, in our previous class, we've been able to discuss about the topic demand and supply. And if you still remember, we said demand is the quantity of goods that a consumer is, first of all, willing and able. Now, you need to know that before demand can be effective, you have to be willing and you have to be able to buy that particular commodity. So before your demand could be effective, you have to be able to buy it. That is, you have to have your purchasing power. So that's the purchasing power is the ability to be able to get that particular goods. And without that ability, we have said that demand will not be effective. And also we know that supply is the quantity of goods that a supplier is able and willing. Now, it is not enough for just a supplier to be able to sell a particular goods, but also willing to sell it at a particular price and at a particular time. So in that kind of market, which we have said, which is a free market economy, so the prices of goods would be highly determined by the forces of demand and supply. Take for instance, where we have, a reasonable number of suppliers, that is where we have enough number of suppliers and less demand. In that case, of course, you will agree with me that suppliers would not want to charge high prices for their goods. Of course, if you are a supplier, and if you are a supplier and you know that you have competitors in the market, and the demand that you're getting for your particular product is not up to what you expect. Of course, you will agree with me that you don't want to charge high prices because you would not, you want to make sales, and then you want people to patronize you. So what we are saying in essence is the price is being determined by the forces of demand and supply. Okay, so now when we talk about price mechanism, what are we talking about? So price mechanism is the way changes in price affect, the way the changes in price affect or influence the production of goods and services and the demand for them. So the way changes in price. Now don't forget, while we were discussing the topic, demand and supply, most especially when we're talking about demand, we said that consumers will want to, we said the rule of demand is, the lower the price, the greater the quantity demanded. Because when the price is low, consumers want to buy more, right? So we are talking about, and price mechanism is talking about the way changes in price affect or influence the production of goods and the demand for them. So we are looking at that price mechanisms. That is the factors that the factors or the that determines the prices. So we have said that the price mechanism is the way changes in price affect or influence the production of goods and the demand for them. And so also that supply, when the price of commodities is high, the suppliers would want to supply more because they want to make profit, because they know that, oh, this is an opportunity. The price of our commodity is high in the market. So in that case, they want to sell more in order to make enough profit. All right. So now, price mechanism is a system whereby prices of goods and services are determined by the forces of demand and supply. Now, I've explained earlier that the market behavior of the buyers and sellers determine the prices of a commodity. All right. So, that price mechanism is based on the principle that the supply of any given commodity can only match the demand if prices move freely without being hindered by such factor as hoarding or artificial scarcity. So we are saying, okay, now, take for instance, we are moving towards the raining season in this part of the country. Now, we are moving towards the season of raining season. Now, this time around, there will be increase or there will be high demand of goods like umbrella. There will be high demand of some particular set of products. You understand? So in that case, because of as a supplier, there is every tendency that you might want to increase the prices of such commodity to some extent. But come to think of it, when there is no, when the weather condition is fine, we are not in raining season, everything is working out well. So in that kind of situation, when there is no rainy season, you would agree with me that as a supplier of a product like umbrella, you would not advise that I should increase the prices of my commodity anyhow. You understand? So what I'm seeing in essence is the demand of a particular commodity would and the forces of the supply would determine the prices of such commodity per time. Okay. So, all right. So to continue with this class, I want us to quickly check this schedule. This is quantity demanded, this is quantity supplied, and then this is the price. Now we have the price of goods here at price 2, which is 2 naira. Hopefully, the set of quantity demand is 20, while the quantity supply is 2. And this, if you look at this trend of the quantity demanded and the quantity supplied, you will agree with me that this, agree with the rule of demand. And the rule of demand says the greater the price, which is the greater the price, the lower the quantity demanded. And also, the lower the price, the greater the quantity demanded. And this, if you look at the trend on this quantity supplied, you will agree with me that the lower the price, the lower the quantity supplied. That is to say, as a consumer, when, let's assume you want to go and buy chocolate, and when the price of the chocolate is 2 naira, of course, you have, let's assume you have 20 naira on you. Let's assume, okay, the price of the chocolate is 2 naira, you want to buy more, and, okay, take for instance, the price of chocolate is now 4 naira. Of course, you would not want to buy as much as you're buying when it was 2 naira. And as the price is going up, your demand will be coming down. Your demand will be coming down. And also on the quantity supplied, as a supplier, when the price is lower, you want to, you would not want to sell. And when the price is higher, you would be encouraged to sell more. And once you lay our emphasis on the points when your demand is equal to your supply. Now, at this point, which is 10 naira, you are demanding for 15 goods and the supplier is ready to supply for that same 15 goods. So this point is the point we say that our demand is equal to our supply, and it is the point we call equilibrium point. So at this point, it is the point we call equilibrium point. So we are moving to the next concept, which is equilibrium point. And I've explained from this diagram what equilibrium point means. Now, this price, which is 10 naira, is my equilibrium price, and this 15 is my equilibrium quantity. All right. So now, what is equilibrium price? We said equilibrium price is the price at which the quantity demanded is equal to the quantity supplied, just as I've explained from the diagram, and it is the price at which the buyer and the seller are in agreement. And also, the equilibrium quantity, as I've explained, is the quantity of goods which the buyer is willing to buy and the seller is willing to sell at the given price. So 10 naira, as in that case, is the equilibrium price, and 15, as in that schedule, is the equilibrium quantity. While the point is now the point at which the quantity demand equals to the quantity supply, and it is the meeting point of demand and supply curve. And that could also be explained using this equilibrium chart. Now, if you look at this equilibrium chart closely, you will notice that this is my demand curve and this is my supply curve. Don't forget that on my vertical axis I have my prices, and on my horizontal axis I have my outputs. Don't forget, this is my y-axis and this is my x-axis. All right. Now, the point when the demand intersects, that is the point when the demands meet with the supply, is what we call the equilibrium point. Now, if you trace this to the y-axis, which is the vertical, you will notice that you can get the price, which is the equilibrium price, and if you trace this down to the quantity, you can get the equilibrium quantity. So this point exactly is what we call the equilibrium point. All right. Now we need to ask ourselves, what are the things, or what are those things that could cause changes in equilibrium? What are those things that could cause changes in equilibrium? Now don't forget that the only factor we have, while explaining our demand, we know that the only factor that can cause the change in quantity demand, if you look at this closely, you will notice that the change in quantity demand, that is the reason why the demand is changing from 20 to 18, is because of the price. So the only factor that could lead to the change in quantity demand is what? Price. Now mind you, when you are talking about quantity demand and demand, they are two different things. Quantity demand is the quantity I want to, I'm willing and able to buy. And when we are talking about demand, demand is separate entirely, like it's separate from the quantity demand. Now when we talk about changes in demand, change in demand is different from change in quantity demand. So change in demand, the factors that could lead to the change in demand are every other thing aside from the price. That is, it could be change in taste, it could be the change in preference of goods, and lots more. All right. So one of the difference, or one of the things that could cause the difference in change in equilibrium, is increase in demand. Now, when you are talking about increase in demand, that is, demand is changing from a point to the other. The demand is changing, and the demand curve is moving entirely from a particular point to another point entirely. Now, don't forget, we have said that one of the reasons that could cause change in demand are those factors like, change in taste of a particular commodity or the preference. Now, in this case, the demand is moving from the market demand 1 to market demand 2. And with this will lead to the increase in the prices in the equilibrium price and the equilibrium quantity, thereby changing the equilibrium point to a new position. As you can see, the price is increasing from PE to P2, so also the quantity is increasing from QE to Q2, and the equilibrium point is changing. Okay, so that's one of the changes, one of the factors that could lead to change in equilibrium. Another factor that could lead to change in equilibrium is increase in supply. Now this will lead to a fall in the equilibrium price and a rise in the equilibrium quantity. As you can see, now when supply is increasing, there will be a change in the supply curve. There will be a change in the supply curve, that is from S1 to S2. That's increase in supply from S1 to S2, and the prices will be going from up to down. That is, it's going downward. So also the quantity is going from down to up. That is, it will lead to fall in the equilibrium price and a rise in the equilibrium quantity. Another factor that could lead to change in equilibrium is decrease in demand. Now, when we talk about decrease in demand, it's a situation where there is a decrease in demand while supply remains the same, leading to a decrease in the equilibrium price and quantity. Now, demand is coming from this D1, which is higher demand, to a lower demand, which is D2. And in this case, the price will be decreasing from P1 to P2. So also the quantity will be decreasing from Q1 to Q2, because the prices is no more here. It has changed to this point, and the quantity is no more here. It has changed to this point, and so also we are getting another equilibrium point. So that will lead to a decrease in equilibrium price and quantity. Okay, so another factor that leads to the change in equilibrium is decrease in supply. Now, in this case, if you look at this diagram closely, you will notice that the supply curve is changing from S1, this is S1, to S2. Now, at this point, which is the S1, the equilibrium is at the point when your Q, at this your Q1, at this S1, so you have your equilibrium quantity to be Q1, and your equilibrium price to be P1. All right, so a decrease in your supply would be launching us, or would be taking the supply curve from S1 to S2. So at this point in time, the supply is changing from S1 to S2, so it's resulting to a change in the equilibrium price from P1 to P2, and the equilibrium quantity from Q1 to Q2. And what this is, this would result to is, it's going to result to an increase in the equilibrium price and a decrease in equilibrium quantity. Okay, so those are the reasons, or those are the factors that could lead to change in our equilibrium. Okay, so we're moving to the next section of this class, where we'll be discussing about the concept of price control system. Some other researchers would call it price legislation. Okay, so because now the question is, why is there a need for price control system? Now, don't forget, at the beginning of this class, we said that in a free market system whereby there is little or no government intervention, you have a free market whereby you have enough supplier, you have enough consumer. The forces of demand and supply determines the price of your product or your commodity per time. However, in some kind of situation whereby we have few suppliers, or we have maybe one or two suppliers that are producing a particular commodity, and in that case, there is a need for the government to come in. In the picture, there's a need for the government to come in to legislate or to control the price of goods per time. Because if there's just a supplier supplying, or if there's just a supplier giving a particular product, you will agree with me that there's every tendency that because of more profit that the supplier would want to get, the supplier could cause artificial scarcity, just as I've explained earlier. So when we say price legislation or price control system, we're referring to a way whereby government fix prices of essential commodities in order to protect either the consumer or the producer. So it could be the government could be they come into the picture to either protect the consumer or the producer, and the government adopts some policies. We have policies like the maximum price control. The maximum price control is another name for the maximum price control is what we call the price ceiling. Price ceiling. If you look at a building, like if you look at a building, in a building we have a ceiling. Your ceiling is referred to as your roof, and then we have floor. Now let's lay emphasis on the ceiling for now. The ceiling is referred to as the roof, right? So when we talk about the maximum price control, it is a situation whereby government fixes price, you know, they are fixing price below the equilibrium price. Now, in this case, now we are saying that the price ceiling, government is fixing price below the equilibrium price, and they are doing all of these things to protect the consumer from being exploited, and it could be to control inflation, and also it could be to help low income earners. Now, maximum price control, we are talking about maximum price controls. Now, sometimes the government controls the price mechanism to make commodities available so that the poor can buy them. And for example, in Nigeria, we have during the issue of the pandemic, the coronavirus, the government, the federal government through NNPC determines the prices of petroleum products such as kerosene, such as the PMS, the premium motor spirit, which is also known as the petrol, in order to control the prices. And that is why in the slides I shared with you at the beginning of this class, I told you that you could solve from that slide that from 2016, when the price was when the price has been 145 to this year, which is 2020. Now in 2020, the price moved from 145 to 125, and one of the reasons why the government is doing that, that is one of the example of price ceiling. That is one of the example of the maximum price, and the reason is because the commodity, which is the petroleum product, is essential, and the reason why government is doing that is to be able to make the commodity affordable, so that everybody, so that even the poor can be able to buy them. All right. So, and if you notice that, if you look at this graph closely, now on this vertical axis you have the price, and also on this horizontal we have the quantity. Now if you look at this graph very well, you can see that this is your equilibrium point. That is the point where your demand and your supply intersect. But now this E represents our equilibrium point. Now if you look at this price, now you'll see that I have on this vertical axis I have M and I have max. Now at this maximum point, now that which is maximum price, now the government, this is your equilibrium price, this is your maximum price control. At this point in time, we are saying that the maximum price is the price that is below the equilibrium point. That is the price below the equilibrium point. And usually for this kind of situation, don't forget that we have said that equilibrium point is the point whereby your demand is equal to your supply. That is, the suppliers knows that, they won't be making, there won't be, there won't be any forms of shortage or oversupply. But at this point in time, when the governments have, fixed the maximum price, that is a price below the equilibrium point, it's going to be favorable to the consumers, because now they would be having enough money to purchase more goods. So in that case, one of the things that the government used to do is they come into the picture and then they subsidize such products. Because on our petroleum products in Nigeria, take for instance, in Nigeria, the government they subsidize those products. They would look for a way to get it from the producers and pay the remainder. That is the remaining money that would make up for the original price of such commodities. So that is the maximum price control. As you can see, this is at the maximum price here, and you can see that it is below the equilibrium price. Now you can see that it's below the equilibrium price here. Okay, so that is that about the maximum price legislation. All right, so let's consider the next condition, the next thing that the government, the next factor that the government use in regulating prices, which is the minimum price control policy, and this is also called the price floor. Don't forget, when I was talking about the maximum price control, I mentioned a typical building. That in a building you have the ceiling, which is the roof, and you also have the floor, and it is the fixing of market price above the equilibrium price, and it is done basically to protect the producers in situation of poor harvest. Okay, so if minimum price are set above the equilibrium, it will cause an increase in prices. That is, it will cause an increase in prices. A price floor must be higher than the equilibrium price in order to be effective. So a price floor must be higher than the equilibrium price in order to be effective. Don't forget that I mentioned that the minimum price is, could be also could be called the price floor, and it is just fixing the price. If you look at this diagram closely, you notice that on this vertical axis, don't forget we have our price, and this is the minimum price. Now, this is our equilibrium price, and this is our equilibrium quantity. Now, this is the equilibrium point, which is E. So we are fixing the minimum price above the equilibrium price. So in this case, there will be excess supply, because the suppliers, now that the price is above the equilibrium price, there will be excess supply will emerge, because as a supplier you want to sell more in this kind of case, in this kind of situation. All right. So another typical example, or another factor that could be used to explain the minimum price control, is the minimum wage. Now, if you notice, now in this case, for the minimum wage, you have to be very careful in this case, because this is, don't forget, this is our usual equilibrium curve, which is the intersection of demand and supply. But as it is in this case, this is demand for labor. This is not demand for commodity. This is demand for labor, and this is also the supply for labor. Now, in this case, this is our the market wage, which is the equilibrium price. This is equilibrium price. Now, when the government is setting a minimum wage, and that is a wage, that is the prices that is above the equilibrium price. Now, in that case, what would happen when government is setting a minimum wage? Now, if you notice that at the point when government is setting a minimum wage, that is a wage above the equilibrium price, something must have happened here. That is, if you look at this quantity demanded, there is a decrease in the quantity demanded from this to this point, because it's just like, okay, a supplier an employer that wants to employ people, and an employer that wants to employ people. Now that the government has asked that, okay, we are no more paying in Nigeria, there is a change in the minimum wage in Nigeria from 18,000 to an amount, to close to twice the amount that it was before. Now, in that case, a typical supplier that will be able to employ, take for instance, 5 people, would be reducing, will not be able to afford to employ such set of number of people again. Now, the number of the demand for people will now decrease. The demand for people, so the demand is decreasing from this point to this point. And whereas because the minimum wage has been increased, now we will realize that there will be more people that will want to supply, there will be more people that will want to work, that is more supply. So in that case, what minimum wage or minimum price control leads to, in most cases, is what we call the labor, it's going to lead to supply, that is excess supply, which is labor surplus as it is in this case. And when there is labor surplus, there's every tendency that there will be unemployment. All right. So those are the conditions. Those are the things that the government could use to legislate price of goods per time. Don't forget, we have said we have the minimum price control, and we also have the maximum price control. I wish you all the best. If you have any question, please share with us or ask on the WhatsApp group. I would encourage you to subscribe to this channel so that you can get more videos about these subjects. Thank you and stay safe.